It's the weekend, and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome to Jill on Money. Oh, boy. It's another weekend. The last of July. Everything good for you? We're feeling good over here. Life is good. You know, I noticed this week something that was totally wild. The NASDAQ, which is going completely insane. I was looking up some stats about it because I was doing a TV segment about it. And I looked at, because, you know, we're just in the beginning of this year. But so, I'm sorry, in the middle of this year. I don't have the beginning of the third quarter. I looked up for the first half of the year, right? I look up and I say, how did the S&P do and what drove the success of the S&P 500? So the S&P 500 was up 2.6% through the first half of the year. And technology stocks were responsible for almost the entire move. I was shocked by that. So then I started to dive deeper into this. And, essentially, the NASDAQ composite has jumped about 2.5 times where the S&P 500 is. So once again, technology kind of rules the day. And then I drilled down and I said, okay, what part of technology is doing what, right? You guys have heard us talk about the FANG stocks. You know, those very popular stocks, the ones that dominate. FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Alphabet's Google. Check this out. These five together just five stocks make up 13% of the S&P 500, which is amazing. They have a collective market cap of about $3.8 trillion. Market cap just means like a value, right? The number of shares outstanding times the price of the stock. If FANG were a country and its market cap was its gross domestic product, FANG would be the fourth largest economy in the world. That's pretty amazing. 5 companies. Anyway. So much for all the regulation and all the penalties and all this and all that. Doesn't seem to matter too much. FANGs still rule. All right, we've got a call. Who's the caller on the line, please? Stewart is on the line from Kentucky. Hello, Stewart. Welcome to Jill on Money. What can I do for you, sir?
Yes, ma'am. I just had some questions. I think I emailed you Sunday. I was listening to you in the garage while I was working on some woodwork projects, and I thought, well, I'm going to shoot her an email and just ask her these questions. And
rock and roll. I like it. And then maybe you can figure out how to build something. The only thing I've ever done woodworking-wise, I'm going to just digress for a moment, is I believe I made my parents in shop, which we took in junior high school. I made them a keychain holder, like it was in the shape of a key, a wooden key with little hooks on it. And I remember my father, who is not like one of those gooey fathers who's like, that's beautiful. He literally looked at it and he's like, well, we're not putting this up, but it's okay. What were you making as you were thinking about your financial life?
Well, actually, what I do is I don't know if you're familiar with our landscape. Louisville or the Kentucky area is conducive to trees with a lot of vines that grow around them. Mm-hmm. And I get ones that are about an inch diameter, and I look for things where a vine has grown around it, and then I cut it off. And actually, what I make is walking canes with them. But the vine strangles the tree as it grows and makes it a circular pattern on the piece of wood.
Wait a minute. You got to send us a picture of this because we're going to put it in our blog post for sure.
Yeah, I will. I'll do that because I've just worked on one. I've worked on some others, but I have to go out and kind of to the woodsy area. I mean, we have we're blessed here with a little piece of property here, and I've got a couple off of here, but I've got some other places before. So, and it's kind of a hobby, and I enjoy it. And that type of thing. But
that's awesome.
I'll take a picture and send it to you.
That sounds good. Now in exchange, I will actually answer your financial question instead of just talking to you about your woodworking. So what's on your mind? What can I do for you?
Okay, well, the wife and I are both retired. She retired from a large transportation company here in Louisville, and I've been in the construction industry my whole life, have a comfortable life. We've been blessed. I don't know why. They'll saying we're many are called, but few are chosen. For some reason, we were chosen to be blessed in that perspective, with our children's health and our health and all that. So with that being said, is a couple of years ago in 2015, I invested some money with a company here in town, and basically they're annuity. Mm-hmm. And, and I say these numbers, I say them humbly. It's because and I was listening to you Sunday, and you were talking about or with an attorney that was in the multi-millions of dollars, and I thought, well, that man's got issues because he wants $150,000 a year to live on, and we're certainly not in that category.
That's okay. You got what you got. Let's see. So, how much did you invest in the annuity?
We invested $700,000, and what we did, it was actually four. I mean, myself, my wife, and my wife. So we both, my wife and I both have a Roth. I have one that's not a qualified one, and then I have an IRA that I rolled over.
Okay. So and was this all of the money that was in those accounts that went into those annuities?
Well, except for the non-qualified, that was basically had already been. That had already been taxed, mm-hmm. and I just and some of this money is shame on me, shame not on me, and I beat myself up on that, and that day's over. But what I was asking is these things, and you know how they work. You put in, I'll just give you a number like the largest one here. It's at $303,000 and some change that I invested today, and this was in 2015. Today, the surrender value, and I don't look to surrender it, but it would be like $270,000. So it's like $33,000 in the hole.
Yep.
And you can chime in and don't call me stupid, please.
Wait a second. Who says I'm going to call you stupid? I would never do that. I might say. Listen, I'm not going to say stupid. I might say dumb. No, I'm just kidding you.
Maybe say slow.
Stop it, Stewart. Don't you worry. I promise I'm not going to do that. But wait a second. I'll tell you what. I want to go to a quick break, and then we're going to come back because I do want to find out a few other details about what's going on with your financial life and how you are living currently. And I just want to get a few more details. And then let's talk about a strategy going forward for the money that's in these annuities. Because as you said, to do anything drastic would cost you some real money right now. So, Stewart from Kentucky, hang on 1 second, and we will come back. You are listening to Jill on Money, and our email address here is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Don't forget to hop onto our website, jillonmoney.com. You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We will be right back.
Have a finance question? There are many ways to reach the show. You can call anytime at 855-411-JILL, send an email to askjill@jillonmoney.com, or tweet a question on Twitter using the handle @JillOnMoney. Just use the hashtag AskJill.
You are back with Jill on Money, and before we went to the break, we were speaking to Stewart from Kentucky, who is retired, and he has a bunch of money that he saved. By the way, Stewart, you did an amazing job saving, you and your wife. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Well, and that's one of our issues. Well, I won't say it's an issue. My wife has an easier time at it than me, but I've always been a saver. Mm-hmm. We're not spenders, and I still want to be a saver today.
That's funny. It's hard to.
My wife, she she's gradually getting over that fence where she enjoys spending.
All right. Well, that's okay. She's entitled. So
She is.
you right now you're both retired. Tell me what is the income that you're living on, and then we'll talk about this $700,000 that you have in annuity contracts. So what's the income?
Our income is the wife has a pension from where she worked, and then we both draw our Social Security. We took it at 62 instead of the delayed, and I know that some people argue back and forth over that, but they don't give you the numbers is if you take it early, you wait till you're about 73 or 4 or 5, and that's really when the money catches up if you would have waited longer time. So, and a lot of people that I know haven't made it, haven't lived that long.
Yeah,
so
that's I know. Isn't that the worst when you hear those stories? It's like, well, he was retired, and 2 months later he died. It is a little bit daunting. So the income, the pension plus the 2 Social Security checks, how much is that on a monthly basis?
We're at about $3,300 a month.
Okay, and does that cover your needs?
Do you hear my train?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm sitting on my front porch on a beautiful Kentucky morning. It's about 70 degrees this morning. I've got a train about 2 blocks away. I call that Chooch. That's my favorite. One of my favorite.
I love it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we live on we draw with our Social Security and our pension about $3,300 to $3,400 a year. I mean, a month.
And that $3,300 or so supports your lifestyle.
Pardon me?
Does that support you guys? Do you feel comfortable?
No. We have some other savings that wasn't invested in this that we were able to keep liquid and do that. So we have a couple $100,000 there. So. And what we do is we just take out, $1,500 to $2,000 a month, or more or less, and usually we try to make it less. And because we've got a budget, we try to halfway stick with and stuff. But we do get to travel. We've got a little piece of property in Florida down in the Destin area that we go down to about once every month and a half, 2 months, and spend a couple of weeks down there. And so we're fortunate that way, and so it's. What we're living off of, like I say, is probably, if you add the 15 to the 32, so I'd say we're in between around, say, $4,500 a month is probably between $4,000 and $4,500 is what we average spend a month.
Okay, and is the general game plan to use the money, that other money, say a couple $100,000 in other savings, is to live off that for a while, and then when the annuities no longer have a surrender value, to annuitize them to create the income? Was that the sort of general game plan?
Well, and yes and no. I mean, I wanted. We were looking at the investment income as to use it if we need to, but we were looking at it more for the, for our children's use. And we've had some thoughts. Maybe I don't know if that's good or not to give money a lot. And we're working on setting that up in a way where it's dabbled out a little bit at a time instead of a lot. So we're looking at it from that perspective.
How old are your kids?
Pardon me?
How old are the kids?
I have a son that's 39 and a daughter that's 34.
Okay. And they doing okay? I mean, are they supporting themselves?
Oh, yeah. They support themselves well, and both of their spouses are do well and stuff. And so from the perspective of on a current basis, no, we don't really. I mean, we give them some money here and there and stuff, but I mean, it's because we want to. It's not like they need it or something.
Well,
more about for the grandkids. We have 3 grandchildren, and the wife likes to keep money spent on them.
Okay, understood. So the money that you're living off of to supplement your pension and Social Security, that other savings, is that a real savings account or is that investment account?
No, it's a saving. Well, one of them's a savings account. One of them's an investment account that's a mutual fund. And then, both of them together, one's 120, one's one. Well, actually, I'll be honest with you, it's close to 300 because the mutual fund is pushing 200,000. So I've got close to 300 that I call liquid.
Yep, that's great.
Without this, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, obviously, you listen to the show, you know that I wouldn't be a fan of plunging $700,000 into the annuities. But you got them already. You got them, okay?
Right.
And I don't think it makes a ton of sense for you to give up $30,000 and as a surrender. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really feel on at least one policy. You would be giving up tens of thousands of dollars simply by leaving that annuity environment right now. I think the question becomes, at what point do you get out of those annuities? And the way these annuities work, as I know you know, but I'll just remind everybody, is that surrender charges go down over time. So often you'll get an annuity and it says, well, in year one, if you blow out of this, you will be charged 10% of whatever the value is. And it goes 10, then 9, then 8, then 7. Sometimes they start at 7%. But those surrender charges are very steep, usually in the first 5 years or so. So I think in your case, at this point, I wouldn't necessarily be blowing out of those annuities anytime soon. I would kind of wait it out. And I know someone sold this to you because nobody just wakes up one morning and says, I'd love an annuity. And, very few people go out and buy them on their own. So the person who sold that to you, what you may want to say is, hey, I'm going to keep this for a couple more years at least, but I want to make sure that we're invested properly. One way that you can reduce some of the fees inside of an annuity contract is to pick cheaper sub-accounts, the investments inside of the annuity. And if you tell the person who sold you that, like, hey, I really want cheaper investments inside of it, that's one thing. Now, I'd love to hear back from you, like, honestly, within the next couple of years, or if you even want to follow this up with maybe sending us a snapshot of the annuity investment options. We might be able to help you out with that because I think that might be worth your while. And then on the other money, the other liquid savings, you said you had one mutual fund that has a lot of money in it. I just want to make sure that you don't have too much risk with that money. So what I would suggest is that maybe you make sure that you always have a year of your income need, at least in liquid, money market, boring stuff, bank, whatever. So in your case, if you sort of make sure that the err on the upside, you should have $25,000 that's set aside and probably another $25,000 just in case of an emergency. So 50 of your 300 should be really safe. And the rest of it should be invested in a much lower risk way than, say, even the money that's in the annuity, because you are going to need to tap this money. And then what I think we've got to figure out is how to eventually move these annuities back into their proper place, which is just as a retirement structure, an IRA, a Roth IRA, a rollover IRA. And for the non-qualified annuity, what we may do is that when that surrender charge is lower, maybe at that point, instead of moving it out, we annuitize it. You just supplement your income with money from that annuity. But for today, Stewart, our woodworking expert and train-loving fan from Kentucky, I'm not going to tell you to do much with the annuities. Send us some follow-up information. We'll help you out with the allocation. And do me one other favor. Just tell your wife, don't give away too much money right now to the kids. Don't worry about that. I think in the future you're going to have some better options, and maybe it will be through those annuities. All right? Thank you so much for calling. And we will be right back. You can reach us very easily with your questions. Just send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Have a finance question? There are many ways to reach the show. You can call anytime at 855-411-JILL, send an email to askjill at jillonmoney.com, or tweet a question on Twitter using the handle @JillOnMoney. Just use the hashtag AskJill.
You're back with Jill on Money, and we are delighted that you're joining us. How you doing? I'm very excited. I'm going to blow through some emails right now because Mark's totally making me nuts about, like, you got to get these going. I probably spend too much time on each one. So let's see what I can do here. From Robert. Robert's 64 years old. He plans on full retirement at 66. He's got a 401k with his job, and it's got about $150,000. And wait a second, 401k about $150, and retirement currently set to pay out $1,300 if I retire. I have another annuity from my wife who died 19 years ago. It's $120,000. I'd get $700 for life, Social Security $2,700, cash on hand, money market $70,000. I have college $25,000, must be a loan, $300 a month. I live in my home after 34 years. I have no other debt. I have a high credit score. Can I or should I consider buying my retirement down south now? What's at risk? I want to move to Carolina to be in between my two kids who I raised and put through college and close to my grandchildren. One's in Virginia, the other's in Florida. Should I buy now while I'm still working, making almost $98,000, or do I wait? He says I can get a $200,000 home down there, pay it off when I sell my Connecticut home. Do I need to pay off that home first? I don't know. I don't love this plan. Why should we do it now? I mean, you're not going to retire for a couple of years. I would wait. I don't like I know that this is very interesting behavior. This is behavior of a hot housing market. And, remember, like 10, 12 years ago? It's also one of the reasons that it's really making people crazy, because right now housing prices are rising because there's no inventory, or but very low inventory. And mortgage rates are rising. So housing affordability has actually dropped to the lowest level in about a decade. So I get that you want to do something. I wouldn't. I would just wait. When you're ready to retire, sell your house, buy a new house, and that's it. It's just lower risk doing it that way. You don't want to get stuck with two homes, and I don't know what the market's going to do. Worst case scenario is you buy something now, and then all of a sudden we're in a recession. You're stuck with two homes. You have to either keep working, rent it out. I don't know. Let's just be really conservative and wait. Okay? Ernesto writes that he loves the show. Okay. Ernesto's 26 years old. I have about $8,500 left in federal student loans. Interest rates around 3.5%. I've been making extra payments. I really would like to pay this down, as the debt it feels like a burden to me. I know. But 3.5% is cheap. I contribute to a Roth IRA every paycheck. I put $420 a month into this account, which is great. He makes $82,000 and he's 26. That's pretty good. I also have a traditional 401k with $20,000 in it. My question is, would it be a wise idea for me to convert over some of my 401k into the Roth and max it out for the year, and then use the money I was contributing every paycheck towards my loans and pay those off quickly? I don't know if you need to. I don't think you need to convert your traditional. Leave it alone. It sounds to me, I don't know if you're still contributing to it, but I would just leave that alone. And I think that, it sounds like you're in good shape. If you can I would almost prefer you put more money, max out the Roth IRA and go a little bit easy on paying down the student loan, except that I know that that's driving you crazy. So I'm not even going to tell you to do it because it's just driving you crazy. So what I would do is this. I wouldn't necessarily convert anything. Keep paying down the loan. Put as much money as you can into the Roth and don't worry about it. And don't go nutty trying to outguess and outsmart. You're in not, a huge tax rate, but, you're paying enough in taxes. And so you're doing a little bit of everything. And I think that makes sense. So stay with it, Ernesto. Good game plan. Okay, who do we got here? Steve says, you seem to really like index funds. I do, because I like cheap investing. How much would you consider a good percentage of my retirement portfolio should be in index funds? I'm retiring at 64 in October. I think everything should be in index funds. It's just a question of what type of index funds. Stock, bond, something in between. I need more info. I'm sorry, Steve. I need to know, how much money's in this account. Do you have other sources of income? It sounds to me like you are asking a allocation question, which I can totally answer, but do need more info. Okay. And Finally, Tony, who's from California, he wants to withdraw 529 money for a short-term intensive learning program for his daughter's reading comprehension challenges. They have an accredited full-time academy, but the particular program is not part of the full-time school. I've been unable to verify this is a non-taxable or qualifying expense under a qualifying institution because the law is so new and this type of early withdrawal is the antithesis of what 529 plan managers want. There's little to no documentation on what is a qualifying expense and institution. Any insight? You know, there's going to be a list. And if you have a 529 plan and it's in California and it's not a qualifying institution and they say it's not on the list, I wouldn't do it. I think that the general theme when we are in transition, whether it's tax law, changes in 529, is to be conservative because you don't want a negative surprise. So I would leave it be. I wouldn't pull the money out for that. And that's what I would do. And that's the same thing for people who are thinking about mortgages or am I going to be using 529 plans for high school, private high school? I don't know, whatever. All that stuff. Come on. So there you have it. I blew through a lot of them right there, huh? Not bad, Mark. Kind of happy with myself right now. All right. There's like hundreds more, so don't get so excited, Jill. That's pretty much what he's saying to himself, right? Hundreds more? Not thousands more, though. Hundreds. Okay. That's good. All right. You are listening to Jill on Money, and you can do lots of things to get on the air with us. You can send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. Or maybe you just want to potchkey around the website. The website, jillonmoney.com, is a very easy to navigate site. If you go there, see, I'm going to do it right now with you. jillonmoney.com. At the top, there's a little button that says Contact. And it says Contact Jill. And you can complete a form. And you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. So do that. Check it out, jillonmoney.com. Okay, when we return, more of your questions. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of a show or want to check out a past show, go to jillonmoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a question, we want to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Have you forgotten that I'm a certified financial planner and the senior CFP board ambassador and that Mark is currently maybe just a year away from attaining the ability to put CFP with a little circle registered trademark after his name? Mark, I would totally put that on your email signature if that were to happen. I just want to say. He wants to know, did I ever think it? Yeah, of course I did. Of course I did. But as soon as you said you were going to take classes, I knew that you're so, single-minded and focused that you would obviously go there. That banana looks good. A little hungry here. Okay. Let's blow through some emails. Darn it. Okay. Let's start with Bob, who says, my credit union tells me I'm over the limit in my accounts to be covered with insurance. Let me just remind everybody, FDIC insurance is covered for in case your bank goes broke. Okay. So right now, if you have $250,000, up to $250,000, you're insured. And then if your bank fails, that's not a problem. But if your deposit is above $250,000, then you might have to wait for some money. It could take a while, this, that, and the other thing. So we think that Bob has more than $250,000. And so he said, here's where he goes with this. I don't have a lot of money. If I don't have a lot of money, if he's got more than 250, he's got a lot of money to me. I've worked hard all my life. I'm afraid to try something I don't understand. I'm 78 years old. The credit union introduced me to a financial advisor. Isn't that shocking, Mark? He suggests CDs for 18 months, which he claims is safe. CDs are safe. And the bank CDs that he is suggesting are Goldman Sachs or Citi. Both are fine. The other suggestion is a family legacy life insurance policy. Okay, let's go backwards, Bob. Absolutely, positively do not buy anything that is an insurance product. No life insurance, no annuity. Next, I want to know how much money you have. If you have less than $250,000, then you have nothing to worry about. If you have more, you could certainly buy a CD, an 18-month CD, and you can get a Goldman Sachs CD. That's fine, or a Citibank CD, whatever has a higher rate. But I really want to make sure that you don't do anything, don't buy anything you don't need, and be very, very careful. And if you've got any other questions, you must let me know. Okay? Please? Pretty please? Pretty please? Pretty please? Okay. Here's a question from Renee who wants to know, what do you think of auto investing? I'm looking at Fidelity Go and looking at investing $29,000 into an account. So Fidelity Go is like many of the automatic investment companies. So there's Fidelity has a version of this. Vanguard has a version of this. The independent ones are Betterment, which is a sponsor of my podcast, Wealthfront, Personal Capital. So Renee, all these things are pretty much, they have similar ways to interact with them. You go online, you do a risk assessment, you tell them about yourself, and then they manage your money. So in the Fidelity iteration of this, the minimum investment is zero. The advisory fee is 0.35%. So that's a little bit more. I think the Betterment is 0.25%. I think Vanguard's is 0.30%. So you may want to shop around if you're going to do it. I would want to know a little bit more about you before I give you the absolute positive go for it, because, you know, maybe you could do it yourself. Maybe you don't need that. Maybe you can just go into Fidelity, open up an account, and put half your money in an bond index and half your money in a stock index and go to sleep at night. Maybe that would be easier. Maybe that would be better. I don't know. But give us a holler back, because I know a lot of people are interested in these. They're great. I think really happy that they're definitely, you know, seeing more business because it's a good way to invest. But I also want to be very clear that the cheapest alternative is to just buy index funds yourself. JB wants to know about his HSA, his health savings account. Can I invest that money in stocks or funds, or just max out with People's United Bank? You can invest in stock or funds, but it's very hard to do it. You have to go to a place that will actually allow you to do it, and there are these weird sponsors. So yes, you can definitely do it. There are some limitations about where you can go with that. If you think you're going to need the money, like I'm going to have a knee surgery, it's not going to be covered next year. Anything you think you're going to use in the next year, maybe 2 years, I would keep safe. So you got to do a little research. You got to bang around, but it's usually not offered through like a standard Fidelity, Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, Schwab kind of platform. All right. Whew, Mark, I'm blowing through this, right? I now only have 999 emails to go or something like that. Anyway, you're listening to the Jill on Money Show. If you go to our website, jillonmoney.com, you can read stuff that we write. You can listen to past shows. You can subscribe to our podcast, Better Off. And you can watch television segments and videos and all the fun things you can see right there. One place, Jill on Money. Guess what? You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter as well. All of that. Just go to jillonmoney.com. When we return, more of your questions. We'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. Before we head out for this hour, I want to respond to a really interesting question I received from a colleague of mine who writes, Jill, I have $125,000 in my 401k, $3,500 in my bank account. Right now, my apartment is worth $1 million. I have a $600,000 mortgage. I'm thinking of pulling the money out of my 401k to help pay down my mortgage. Thumbs down, says Mark. The thing is, and this is what I told her because she sent me an email and then I actually already responded to her. I believe I wrote back in all caps, please don't do that. And the reason is really clear to me, and maybe you guys don't see it this way, but this is how I look at the world. I look at the world as there are liquid assets and there are illiquid assets. I mean, it shows up on the same place. On the left side of your balance sheet are all of your assets. But an apartment is an illiquid asset. And paying down that mortgage, while it sort of feels good, first of all, she'd only partially pay it down. But she's 62 years old. And if she were to pull the money out of the 401k, sure, no early withdrawal penalty, but she still gets taxed on it. So whatever she pulls out of that 401k, she gets taxed on. And then she puts it down on this mortgage. And then what happens if in 3 years she gets laid off, sick, something, and she needs that liquidity? She wouldn't have it. It's in her apartment. So the way I actually explained it to her was, you know, she's looking at it as, oh, my God, I'm 62 years old. I don't want to have a mortgage for another 15 years. And I said, think of that mortgage as your freedom fund. That's what it is. It's your freedom. Because paying down a mortgage gives you this quick short-term boost of excitement. But if something were to happen, how do you get the money out again? Sure, you could do a reverse mortgage later, but that's costly. And why take the money, that beautiful liquidity, out of the 401k? Let it go. Anyway, she gave me a pinky swear. I actually went up to go see her and like went down on bent knee and said, please don't do this. So don't do that either. Revere the liquidity. Okay, when we return, more of the Jill on Money Show. You can reach us by shooting us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome to hour number 2 of the final show for the month of July 2018. Delighted that you are with us. We love this show. So much fun. It is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. It's the show that's not scary or boring, even though it's a money show. It's fun. You know, it's great. And every now and again, I bring on folks who are colleagues of mine because they write interesting books or they have interesting things to say. And that is the case today. Our guest is Steve Vernon. I met him when we were both writing for CBS MoneyWatch. I was there in the beginning of the launch of that website. And Steve, really interesting guy because when I say this, he's an interesting guy, he's an actuary. Don't roll your eyes. But he's an actuary who can speak English. He's just written a new book. It's called Retirement Game Changers: Strategies for a Healthy, Financially Secure, and Fulfilling Long Life. Here's our interview with Steve Vernon. Steve Vernon, welcome to the program. I'm so excited to have you. Steve and I are old pals from our MoneyWatch days. So you've written a new book. It's called Retirement Game Changers: Strategies for a Healthy, Financially Secure, and Fulfilling Long Life. So let me ask you a question. How much more can we read about retirement? What's different now? Why write this book?
Well, Jill, I was really focused on workers in their 50s and 60s and the critical series of decisions that they need to make as they transition out of the workforce and into retirement. And no other retirement book covers these decisions. So that's inspired me to write the book.
And what about your own personal experience in your semi-ish retirement?
Oh, that's a good question. See, I just turned 65 a month ago, and so I've been studying retirement professionally for over 40 years, both as a consulting actuary and later as a writer and journalist and researcher. And I thought, I've given this a lot of thought for myself, and a lot of these strategies would work for ordinary folks. So I wanted to share them with them.
When you think about what you have learned right now in the early stages of your twilight career, your encore career, if you will, what is it that you think you got wrong when you were thinking about this even 10 years ago? What did you miss?
Well, I didn't miss anything, Jill. And let me explain, is that when you look at the financial resources of most Americans, including myself, retiring in your late 50s, early 60s just isn't going to work. The money isn't there. And we're living a lot longer lives, and so it's just not a reality. And so I came to the conclusion in my early 50s that I needed to work longer, but I didn't want to keep working at the same fast-paced job that I had been working at through most of my career. And so I shifted into a career on writing and research. I did that in my early to mid-50s, and that's worked out very, very well. I'm actually living and have been living for more than 10 years what I'm recommending. It's been working out great so far.
Why has it become harder for people to retire in their early 60s? What's happened that's different? You're an actuary, which means you really do study some of the numbers behind this. So talk about some of the trends that have changed.
In the 20th century, we added 30 years to average lives, and that is a game changer with respect to planning your retirement. But our thinking and our culture really haven't caught up to that. And so what I mean by that is that if you try and work for, say, 40 years from your early 20s to your early 60s and then have a 30-year retirement, the math just doesn't work. It's just too hard to save enough money over a 40-year career to fund a 30-year retirement. And so that's a real compelling reason why we need to work longer. We're just not set up for that as a society. And so people think they're entitled to retire, and they should retire. Employers often don't want older workers, and these are the things that have to change. And so that's some of the game-changing challenges. But at the same time, we're all aware that employers have done away with traditional pension plans and retiree health plans, so that's another challenge. Another big challenge is if we're going to live for another 20 or 30 years, think about the stock market crashing. 1987 to 2017, 30 years, we had 4 stock market crashes during that time. So I say if you're going to be retired for 20 or 30 years, you have to have strategies to survive stock market crashes. So that's another challenge. And finally, we're all aware of health care and long-term care being really expensive. And so we have some game-changing challenges that prior generations of retirees just didn't have. But at the same time, we have tools and research and insights to address these challenges. So we have 401k plans, and we just have to know how to use them. We have health savings accounts. We have research that shows us how to be healthy and socially connected. We have new ways of living. And all of this is available on the Internet. So the way I look at it is we have both at the same time game-changing challenges, but we also have game-changing tools and insights and research, and we just have to use those to address our challenges.
And part of the appeal of this book, as I read through it, is it does something that really does outline action steps, like specific steps that you need to do, and it provides really helpful resources. I also wonder whether some of the things that you raise, they're really not financial issues, are they?
Jill, you hit it on the head there. Finances are important, and you need to do a good job with them, but you just cannot ignore taking care of your health, and most surprisingly recently is your social connectedness. And we're seeing research that shows that being socially isolated can have just as much of a risk as smoking or obesity. And so setting up your life so that you're healthy and socially connected, I feel, is as important as all the finances.
And you also asked some provocative questions about decide if you can be happy living on less income. How can you do that?
Well, first of all, it comes about by doing a realistic assessment of what your retirement income will be. And I see too many people just wing it. You know, they look at their savings account and they say, "Oh, I've got $300 or $400 or $500,000. That's got to be enough. It's the most money I've ever seen in my life." Well, not if you're going to live for another 20 or 30 years. And so a realistic assessment of what your regular retirement income could be, given Social Security and what your savings are, the vast majority of Americans are going to be living on a lower standard of living that they were in their working years. Now, that might not be so bad. If you really want to retire and really want to have your freedom, you might say that's a good trade-off.
Right.
But also, you might pay off the mortgage on your house. You might not be spending as much money on your kids anymore because they're off the payroll. And so I think a lot of people could be happy living on a lower standard of living, but you just want to be conscious of that and calculate what your income will be and then see if that's going to cover your living expenses.
We'll get back to our interview with Steve Vernon in just a minute. If you've got a financial question, maybe it's about retirement, maybe it's about taxes, maybe it's about how much to spend on your kids' education, we want to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Wondering how to make your money work for you? Get on the line now, 855-411-JILL. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You are back with Jill on Money. I'm Jill Schlesinger. Mark Talercio is running the program, the best executive producer in the world. Have you gone onto the website lately, jillonmoney.com? You can listen to past shows, or if you've missed part of this show, you can go on to jillonmoney.com. There's tabs right at the top. Read, listen, watch, all that. And you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Free! Anyway, check it out. jillonmoney.com. Sign up for our free weekly newsletter and listen to old shows if you want, or read columns that we're writing. All good stuff. All right. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. You can also hit the button at the top of the website that says Contact Us at jillonmoney.com, or you can send an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com, askjill@jillonmoney.com. We field so many questions about preparing for retirement. It's really important for you to understand it's not just financial, and that's what our guest, Steve Vernon, is talking about in this segment. He's talking about maintaining social connections as you age and why that's so important. Here's more of our interview. So what do you think people need to do in terms of that other piece of it when you said maintaining social connections? I feel like a lot of people are making retirement decisions and they're doing it around family. So how do you weigh having social connections, people your own age and your own life, separate from the family?
Well, let me start by saying when I say being socially connected, your family is probably the first one on that list. We proposed the idea of a social portfolio, and we're advocating that you spend as much time thinking about your social portfolio as you might about your investment portfolio. Mm-hmm. And so you want to have a diversified social portfolio. And so that means some family members, but also some not family members, people of different ages, different interests. And particularly as you get into your 80s and 90s, a social convoy of people who will help you when you need help. That is critical. And so we say develop a robust, diversified social portfolio as part of your retirement planning.
So what are some of the things that you can do to help people get there?
And I acknowledge, Jill, that can be hard. A lot of people have developed their social lives through work, and when they retire, that's disrupted. But then I say, well, take a cue from that. Go volunteer. And volunteering can be like work with respect to a social portfolio. And so a real easy way to start making new friends and still feel wanted and connected is to go volunteer somewhere.
I like the idea that you've done in your own life, which is, having a robust career, right? So you were an actuary and you were a consultant. Can you talk a little bit about how you've made your own decisions, about your choices in your career, and how that has helped line you up to have a really fulfilling and interesting next chapter in your 60s.
And actually, there are a number of different ways to keep working in your 60s and even maybe your 70s that I outline in the book. And so an encore career is one of them, and that's what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. An encore career really just builds on your prior career in terms of your skills and your contacts, but you just go off in a different direction. And so I had a long career as a consulting actuary, helping employers run their retirement programs. And when I launched my encore career, I started doing retirement education and newsletters. I wrote a DVD and some books. And so all my contacts I had were also interested in that work. And so I was just building off of the contacts I made in the employer world, and also just building off of my skills. And so that's really the definition of an encore career, and that's just one way to keep working. Other people might want to take a completely different approach and get a new credential or a new education on some different skill and just go off in a totally different approach. And that's cool, too. Finally, some people might say, I like my employer, I like my job. I just want to work 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week. And at a lot of places, if you're a valued employee, that will work. And so I encourage people to think about their circumstances and what might help them work in a way that's more healthy for them and more interesting.
People sometimes will call the show and we had this happen today. A guy called and he says, I retired already. I'm 67 years old, right? I'll give you some of his numbers. And he says, he basically has, he and his wife, $800,000 saved. Most of it is in retirement assets. No debt. Going to have $3,000 a month in income from Social Security between him and his wife. Probably goes up to, let's say, by the time in the next couple of years, they'll have $4,500 a month in income, but they need $9,000. So they got half of it done. But he's already retired. His wife's still working. And he says, I got $800,000. How should I invest it so that I can draw on my money and it won't run out? And my answer was, whoops, you retired a little too soon. And I asked him if he would go back to work because I really don't want to. What is the right response to someone like that?
Well, you gave the right response, Jill, is that had he done the math, and it's not high math, it's pretty easy math, to figure out what his income could be, he would have realized that he's not going to be able to make $800,000 work for that level that he needed. And so the numbers don't lie. I mean, the numbers are what you have to work with. And so he's an example of what I call people who wing it. And they have a retirement number that they think they need to retire, but a retirement number is way too simplistic. And instead you want to calculate your income that you've got from Social Security and a pension if you have one, and how much you can realistically draw down from invested assets, and compare that to your living expenses. And what that does is lead you to some basic but hard choices. And your caller that you talked about, he would have said, oh, dear, my $800,000 isn't enough to support my current lifestyle. Mm-hmm. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic product that you can tell him about that's going to make that math work for him. And so he's either got to reduce his standard of living or work longer. And that's the choice.
It's so hard because I think people just hate to hear that answer, work longer. So when I do my back of the envelope calculation with folks, I'll often I'm a wimp, so you're probably not going to agree with this, but I don't like this whole 4% withdrawal. I get very nervous about it, and I'm too wimpy, so I use a lower number. So I'm more of like a 3%.
There's nothing wrong with 3% or 4%. Even 4% can be fine, but with one very important difference. And we happen to be talking about the 4% rule. But the classic definition of the 4% rule is you calculate what your withdrawal is in your first year of retirement, and you lock that in forevermore, regardless of what happens with your investment portfolio. Mm-hmm. And that's just a bad idea. Mm-hmm. And so instead, if you take 4% of your remaining assets every year, year after year, that can work. And if your investments do well, you can bump up your withdrawal, and if your investments do poorly, you have to cut it back. So that's the way to do the 4% rule if you want to do 4%. In today's world, 3% is close to just living off of interest and dividends. It's a little higher than that.
Right.
But that will give you less current income, but it saves more assets for later and more assets for a legacy. So it just depends on whether you want to spend more now or later.
We'll get back to our interview with Steve Vernon in just a moment. And I just want to point out that, we're talking a lot about retirement on this program, but your financial life, it's more than retirement. It's more than your portfolio. It's so much bigger than that. And for many of you, you ask questions, you want to know what direction you need to go in. Well, the easiest thing to do is to send us a note. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll help you figure out what steps to take. If you're working with a financial advisor or a salesperson and you're feeling a little shaky about the advice, you're not sure what direction to go in, send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And you can always go to our website, jillonmoney.com, and there you may want to check out our podcast. It's called Better Off. You can subscribe to it on Apple, Stitcher, radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else you find your favorite podcasts. And while you're on the website, don't forget, sign up for that free weekly newsletter. Trying to beef up our weekly newsletter subscriptions because Mark is failing miserably, so I have to tell you about it every single week. Okay, he's not failing. He's the best ever. We will be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill at jillonmoney.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Jill on Money. I guess we lost like 5 people because we had 5 bots and Twitter purged the roles, but there's still most of you out there. Hey, Mark, did you happen to see that Maggie Haberman quit Twitter? I thought that was interesting. She's on there, but she's not as crazy. I think she's a little insane about it. I think she would say that too. Anyway, if anyone has missed the series, The Fourth Estate, which I guess was it Showtime, and now it's on Netflix also, or is it just Showtime? Okay, so check it out, Showtime, The Fourth Estate. Showtime is owned by CBS Corporation, and I am partially employed by the CBS Corporation. There's my full disclosure. We are talking to Steve Vernon. His book is called Retirement Game Changers. And if you're thinking about retirement, there are a number of hurdles that you may encounter. Some of them are the hurdles you put there for yourself. So as we finish up with Steve, we're talking about some of the impediments to doing good financial planning for retirement. Here's the last bit of our interview with Steve Vernon. What do you think are the real impediments to getting people to think about retirement in a more thoughtful way?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Jill, because I think that's the quote-unquote secret to healthy, financially secure long life is to pay attention to the behavioral issues. Getting people to even spend time on retirement. That's a problem. Half of people don't even do any planning for retirement. To me, that's one of the biggest challenges is encouraging people to spend the time. When you were entering the workforce in your 20s, you know, some of your folks went to college, maybe you did some kind of training or education. You just didn't graduate from high school and wing it and decide you're going to get a job. You had to spend years either getting a college degree or getting some kind of vocational credential that supported you for 30 or 40 years. It's kind of the same, although not quite as much time, but you just can't live another 30 years without spending some time planning for it.
What is it that I haven't asked you that is very important and we must cover?
Let's take a look at generating retirement income. And there are some very basic, simple strategies that most people can use. We did some research at Stanford. We looked at 292 different retirement income strategies, and we came up with a very straightforward strategy that almost anybody can do. And it goes like this, is that first, optimize your Social Security. That's usually through some kind of a delay strategy. And if you do that, somewhere from 70 to 80% of your total retirement income is going to be coming from Social Security. So if you optimize your Social Security, a lot of people could just take their invested assets, invested in a target date fund, and use the IRS required minimum distribution, which starts at 70.5, that actually compared better than most of the strategies we looked at. So just now, within a period of a minute or so, I've described a strategy that almost anybody can do. And yes, there are details, but pretty much anybody can understand that. Spend the time to learn how to develop a retirement income portfolio that will last the rest of your life. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's what I call a downshifting or right-shifting strategy. And what we're seeing is that if you're in your late 50s or early 60s, the best strategy for most people would be, if possible, to delay starting your Social Security until 70 and delay drawing down on your retirement assets at 70. You live to 90, you still have 20 years of retirement. So how do you make it from your early 60s to 70? And I contend that if you could find some work that was maybe part-time work or maybe work that you enjoy more, it's not as stressful, you don't have to commute, whatever it is that bothers you about your current work, fix that. And if all you have to do is make enough money to cover your living expenses, that's what I call a downshifting strategy.
Right.
And I've done a version of that. Looking out for that downshifting strategy, and as you approach your early 60s, while you're still working in your careers, get your radar out for those kinds of opportunities, whether you can work part-time with your employer, go off in a new direction, maybe you work for a customer or a vendor.
So the guy who called, I was like, can't you do something, that's fun? He goes, I don't want to work for the man anymore, right? So he's talking about playing guitar. So Mark, the producer, says, well, go give guitar lessons. Go work in like a music store. Just do something. And I would contend that the idea of work is really important to a lot of people, and they underestimate what it feels like not to be working after decades of working. And I know some people love it, but I got to tell you something. A lot of my friends, they freak out when they stop working. I'm talking about women who take time out to have kids. I'm talking about people who retire in their 50s or 60s, and it's really intense. So I love the idea of downshifting and keeping yourself open to opportunities for sure.
Well, Jill, and you're right about people really don't realize what it might be not to work. And when you think about it, your work fulfills three very basic human needs. First is that it forms a sense of identity. I'm a journalist, I'm a doctor, I'm an accountant, and that's part of your identity. Second, it gives you meaning and purpose. You're needed by people. And third, that's where your social network comes from. And so those are very basic human needs, and if you just abruptly cut that off without any planning, it's no surprise that people are lost. And so to me, part of the planning for retirement is, what's my identity going to be? It is how will I have some kind of meaning in my life, and it is, how can I be socially connected? And so those, to me, are as important as all the financial planning.
It is such a delight to talk to you. Steve Vernon, FSA, which stands for, what does FSA stand for?
It's a fellow in the Society of Actuaries.
A fellow in the Society of Actuaries, a rollicking group, everybody. Just know that. His book is called Retirement Game Changers. We will have a link to it so you can buy it. So much great information in there, tons of resources. And if at the very least all you do is get one little nudge, a little kick in the tush to do something, one of the things in this book, and it's got many, many, many things, I think it is well worth the price. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Jill, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks so much to my pal Steve Vernon. The book is called Retirement Game Changers. It's very helpful. Very much enjoyed this, and some real good tips at the end of every chapter. Very helpful. If you would like more information, you can just head over to our website, JillOnMoney.com. We'll have a link to Steve's column at CBS MoneyWatch and how you can buy the book. We will be right back with more of your financial questions.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Got a lot of stuff going on here in the big studio. Working hard, trying to find good guests for you, trying to answer all your questions. So let's do that. Let's answer some questions. This is from Mac, who said, I heard you mention possible ways to get out of PMI, private mortgage insurance payments. So here's the story. Our FHA loan began in 2016, so we are locked into this PMI for the life of the loan, as I understand it. My inquiry with the loan officer said closing costs render this option. I think he means that the closing cost negates any savings you would have. If you see another option for us to avoid our PMI, our current loan is 3.5%. We're in Seattle suburb. We're definitely going to hit 20% equity just because the market has gone up in price. Thanks in advance. What is the logic of having PMI for the entire life of the loan? We always pay early and slightly above our mortgage. We had this PMI expert on in the studio recently, and she did talk about how FHA loans are very different in the way that they treat it. It's sort of PMI-like. I don't know what the wisdom is in doing this. And so I really wouldn't pay much extra on this loan. It's I presume that at 3.5%, you're not making a lot. You're not doing a lot to pay down the loan. You can't relieve yourself of the PMI. So essentially, I'd rather take whatever extra money you have and put it into retirement. So that's what I would do. And I wouldn't try to pay it down early. Okay. Here's Wilbur, who says, I couldn't get a retirement article you recently wrote out of my mind. You should probably post this on the show notes, Mark, whatever that retirement article is, because God knows what I wrote. It all melds into one big mush in my brain. It's on the blog, but you could put it in the show notes to link to it. Your wise advice concludes doing nothing is the worst option. I hope you two are heeding your advice. I strongly believe in your article about saving for retirement. I learned about my retirement from my uncle when I was in high school. I noticed he was living a good life, and he's retired. His advice to me was that I should work for the government like he did, because working for the government gives you a guaranteed retirement. I took his advice. I worked for the federal government. I'm now on U.S. government civil service retirement. I've been retired since 1997, when I was 55 years old. Wow. And he, the government has different levels. So he retired at GS-14, so it's good. Anyway, when I started to work, I worked for retirement. I reduced my pay, which went to the retirement account. And I really was thinking as if I were already living in retirement. Same thing for my wife. She maxed out her IRA, Roth IRA. It was not easy living on reduced income, but we knew the day would come when we would retire. And I believe that this is the advice you're giving, and we should all put away as much in retirement while we're working. I was lucky to work for the government, and it provided for retirement. For those working for a government, whether it's federal, city, state, there are benefits that you need to think about, even though the pay may not be as much as in the private sector. I say that all the time. My friends who are teachers, they say, oh, we get screwed. I know, you don't get paid as much. And I'm not happy about that for you, but you do get a great retirement plan, hopefully. By the way, his retirement also came with medical benefits. And I believe in your advice. We should save for retirement, even if you have to sacrifice a few pleasures, and to live the life of enjoyment, because there's a good income while working. Many people spend as much time in retirement as working. As we get older, running out of money is bad. In my retirement since 1997, my income is the same as when I was working, perhaps because I put away as much as I could. Please tell people not to shortchange themselves in retirement, because life in retirement, it can be rough. You can't go back to work. You and I think alike, but as you indicated, the majority of the people don't. They laugh at such advice because they're working and making good money. They want to enjoy life, but I promise you the day of reckoning will come. Thank you, Wilbur. Day of reckoning is a little bit much, but because I don't want to go crazy with that. I don't want to make it sound doom and gloom, but I get it. It's hard to do. So hard. Okay, here's Janet. She watches me on KYW TV. That's a Philadelphia station. My question is there a certain percentage of your annual income that your property taxes should be? Oh, that's fascinating. It's interesting. We only made $85,000 between us working 2 jobs, blah, blah, blah. I think we should fix our house to sell it and then downsize so we don't have to kill ourselves. My husband has a small printing business. It's tough. We owe about $120,000 on our house. We're paying $1,500 a month, which includes taxes. We're trying to figure out the best decision. He'll be 61 in August. I am 56. I'd love some advice. There's not a certain percentage that you would include as property taxes, but there is a certain percentage that we think about in terms of your housing costs, right? And so it's usually about 30%. Let's think about a third of what you make. And you're probably there. But here's the thing. You're asking a very different question, which is you're feeling incredibly under pressure right now. So my question to you is that if you were to downsize, could you really downsize? Could you really downsize? We've talked about this on the program that there are a lot of people who hope to downsize, but it's hard to do. So one way to do it is to not just say, I'm going to downsize and stick around. One of the best ways that I think you can do it is to move to a place that has a much lower cost of living. And if you're willing to do that, could work. So try that out. All right, you are listening to Jill on Money. Would you like to ask us a question? Then give us a holla. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. Before we clean up and close down for the day, we've got a question from Selena, who basically moved from a Wealthfront brokerage account to a Vanguard brokerage account. She was planning to go 100% in a fund with $137,000, but she realized there's a lot of individual stocks, some exchange-traded funds in her portfolio after she did the transfer. So here's what she said. I understand I would need to sell my individual stocks, and that will trigger taxes. What's the best way for me to convert my funds with minimal tax consequences? We have a combined income of around $200,000. I'm maxing out my 403B, 457, and Roth. My husband does max out his Roth and puts 6% of his salary into a 401k to get the match. Love the show. Thanks for reading my email. So when I am looking at your basic tax brackets, I'm looking to see what you got, and I think we're giving you $200. Okay, so you are going to be paying a 20% capital gains tax on anything that you own. And that means that anything you sell that has a long-term capital gain, you'd have to pay 20% tax on. So she also sent me the long list of her holdings. I guess the big question is, does every single holding have a tax associated with it? Did you buy anything that's a loser? So the first step that you would do is you would take the loser and you would make sure that the loser is washed against a winner. That's that's tax selling. That's being smart. The other thing you can do is you can just slowly trade out of these things. Or you can find out, you can do a quick estimate. You can do it all at once, which is sort of like, ugh, that hurts, I know. And that way you can just get it done and pay 20% tax and move whatever the balance is into the index fund. But if you start to poke around and you see, she's got a whole bunch of holdings here, maybe 30 holdings or so. You would sell a loser, make sure you sell a winner against it, and you'll pay if there's more losers than winners, you can carry it forward. If there's more winners than losers, you pay 20% tax. That's it. There's not much more you can do. So I generally like to pay the tax and move on. But that's me. You can also gift those stocks if you're charitably inclined. Then you don't have to pay tax on it and you get a charitable deduction. Okay, that's it. That's the show. If you've got a financial question, give us a holler. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.